NBA 2K12, one of the most awkward 2K releases of all time, to be honest. The game itself wasn't awkward, but the timing was, because it was smack dab in the middle of the NBA lockout. And if you're too young to remember what that means, there was no NBA season. No NBA season meant 2K didn't have the rights to include rookies in the game, and overall it was just very painful to be an NBA fan around this time. So did 2K12 do anything to alleviate that pain? That's what you'll find out as a part of this series, where we do a deep dive into previous 2K games, ranking them by their presentation, graphics, gameplay, and features. I didn't want to play the song for fear of being copyrighted, but if you played 2K12, I know you can hear basketball playing clearly in the background right now. NBA 2K12's intro is easily in contention for the greatest 2K intro of all time, and is no doubt the best out of all the 2Ks we've reviewed to this point. Well, actually that's because none of them have even had intros so far. What's up with that? The intro to this game represented a new era in 2K basketball, which actually makes it one of the more important installments into the series. 2K11 introduced Michael Jordan and a series of classic teams that he played against, but 12 went even further by greatly expanding this roster of legends. We'll get more in depth on that later, but as part of the presentation, this intro did a beautiful job advertising this giant step in a new direction. After that amazing intro, you're dropped into 2K's redesigned menu, which is just gorgeous. Not only does it have everything you need in one neat place, but the overall aesthetics are beautiful as well. You've got your quick game, my player, association, NBA's greatest, which we'll get into in the features, and you could even see where you were ranked online apparently. Although you could tell this gave the system a hard time when you loaded into a quick game, it continued to show physical player models toying around with basketballs instead of just a plain jersey or a logo. But just like in 2K9 where they showed physical jerseys at the screen, there was a wait time before they actually popped up, which was especially persistent whenever you switched jerseys. Who cares, the shit looked awesome. But the actual load screen into games didn't change much from the past few 2Ks. A commentator talks over key players and you're off into the game. There was always a short music video introducing whatever teams you were playing with, and forgive my terrible memory, but I don't recall if that ever happened before this game or not. One last note about presentation that skips around a bit: after you finished a quarter, there would be many commercial breaks that advertised upcoming games in real life, awesome touch that continued the trend of blending gaming with the actual league itself. So before we enter gameplay, we'll chat about the graphics a bit. You may recall me saying 2K11 had the best graphics of any last gen 2K, and while that game certainly looks prettier than 2K13 in my opinion, it'd be hard for me to argue 2K12 wasn't a step up with this evidence. Here's a comparison of faces from 2K11 to 2K12, and a lot of the cyber faces massively improved. Like, it's not even subtle. The face structures look more realistic, the lighting and texture looks better. I can't even make an argument here. The game itself looks good for the time as well. The way I test graphics today is that if I can look back at a game years later and still find something visually to be impressed about, then it was probably good back then as well. This shot of LeBron walking up with the ball to begin the game still looks pretty good considering it's 6 years old. And although I think the ball looked prettier in 2K11, it looked more believable in this game. Also, the way the graphics from the arena reflect on the floor are a bit more pronounced in this game as opposed to previous years. So now, gameplay. You generally know what to expect here by now. Improvements in some places, new problems in others, but here are the specifics. To start off, this is the first old 2K I was able to pick up and control with relative ease. Unlike the others, I was able to take Derrick Rose and pull off dribble moves and get to the basket. That's something I really can't do in these reviews because I'm too used to modern controls and the way they handle. Turns out, 2K released another round of revamped controls that year called Total Shot Stick Control, making it easier to control the post and pull off specific dribble moves. As you learn in a later part of this video, a big focus was being able to use the shot stick to add tons of variations to shooting animations. Whether you were leaning away, which way you were leaning, there was much improvement to the ability to get your shot off. Entering the post and operating became easier as well, and all the moves you could pull off with the ball became very defined. But as usual, the game had its fair share of problems. But unlike with the previous versions, I don't remember what the exploits were off the top of my head. Apparently the hop step was OP if you were really trying, but the big thing when the game came out was the speed problem. Somehow I remember this still being a problem in versions after this, but as we see in this Chris Smooth video, big clunky centers could keep up with lightning quick point guards in a foot race. I imagine that was infuriating on top of all the little shit that happens in 2K games anyways, but I have some notes about this. One, I'm not sure if this issue got patched or not. I looked around some of the old patch notes and didn't see anything about it, but it's just kind of hard to imagine something that simple wasn't adjusted. And two, whereas in our previous reviews I was able to easily find complaints about the gameplay all over YouTube, I really didn't find a whole lot this time, which leads me to believe during this year, we were just dealing with our regular 2K issues, annoying Hall of Fame computers, frustration with the mechanics over time, but I didn't see those major problems that ends up having the 2K community rally around them and end up calling it one of the worst 2Ks ever. I personally remember raging at this game like any other 2K, but nothing bad enough to stop me from playing it every day. So now we move on to features, which is probably the strongest point of 2K12. 11 was one of the best years for the number of new features it added and how fun they were. 2K12 followed in those footsteps by, as mentioned earlier, first adding multiple legends and historic teams to the game. Guys like Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, and even Chris Webber made an appearance before disappearing randomly until 2K18. One of the first things I did with this game was round up those legends, throw them onto the modern rosters, and start the association that never failed to entertain. 2K put even more of a focus on this by releasing a DLC specifically to show off some of NBA history's finest. I didn't bother buying it because I was so busy with everything else, but looking back at the trailers, it does seem like something cool I would have been interested in. It would have probably just appealed to more people if it hadn't been done in like comic book style. I think that was even what turned me away from it back then. But they continued to make good use of the new guys by extending the Jordan Challenge to include some of them. Now you could take guys like Wilt Chamberlain or Hakeem Olajuwon and reenact marquee games from their careers. Upon completion, you'd unlock new historic teams for regular use within the game. Even as a kid, I remember just sitting back and appreciating the extra effort 2K put in to add this mode. I would even say it's partially responsible for me eventually becoming a YouTuber. That's what got me interested in players I never paid much attention to, like Oscar Robinson, and literally through 2K I took to learning about them and eventually ended up doing what I do now. Honestly, I don't know why they don't add a mode like this in every game. They've expanded their historic roster so much since then that if they just did this mode for even like 10 players every year, it'd be an incredible addition. Oh, and I can't forget about the presentation here. The game would actually look like whatever era it came out of, and the courts would accurately portray what they looked like back then. Incredible attention to detail. The commentators would also talk about amazing things those players had done during that game. Also right in line with expanding on previous work, they added to the creating a legend mode. Instead of just being able to use Jordan and play through his career, you could take any player you desired, put him on a team, and play through his career just like you did in 2K11 with Michael Jordan. It was pretty much just like my career where you had minutes and you could improve through drills, but even better was that you could use the money you earned through contracts on a number of things as well. You could buy different signature moves, host activities to gain fans and improve team chemistry, or you could just purchase skill points, which were a much better currency than VC. And now, instead of just having a Jordan collection, you had an entire shoe collection in general that you could equip to your player. The effort, the details, and all the little things in this game were inspired directly from the same type of effort that went into 2K11. As always, our routine checkup on my career. First, I'm gonna interject my own opinion here and say this is where they started to lose me. Believe it or not, but back then people were actually complaining about the time in 2K11 it took to get your player to the NBA. So instead of having the awesome summer circuit, they replaced it with this rookie showcase that doesn't even happen in real life. Even worse, before the lockout ended, as I said earlier, they didn't have any rookies in the game, meaning you were playing this showcase with a bunch of 2K generics. Even worse than that was the fact that you were being drafted to the league with 2K generics, and someone like me who's a stickler for details, if I actually cared about my career back then, it would have drove me crazy. However, that obviously wasn't 2K's fault, it was all legal details. They did what they could to offset the bad timing of the situation by adding a ton of features like pre-draft interviews so you could have some influence where you wound up, the mock draft, adding money, and the ability to negotiate your contract, new endorsements, and the Hall of Fame for when you were ready to retire. They really did add a ton of small details to this mode, and if you were to compare it to its inception just 2 years earlier, you really see how far they came in that short amount of time. In the midst of all the improvements though, one huge drawback was the subtraction introduction of the crew mode. It may have had its issues in NBA 2K11, but as we saw even recently where people had to beg for it to come back on the PS4 and Xbox One, it was disappointing to see it go. For the first time ever, the Association Online made its way to 2K. And I'm proud to say I've still never used this feature in any game because I've simply never had time in life to host an association with a ton of people and keep everything organized enough to actually finish it. Awesome addition though, and clearly important since it's still here today. Here's a personal favorite of mine you may have missed. Inside the practice mode, they literally added a whole interactive training camp hosted by various legends to teach you everything you could do in the gameplay. Different lessons had different mentors, and you had to follow their instructions and pull off moves to complete each step. The awesome part about this was there was actual dialogue from each mentor, which is an incredible detail for a mode I doubt a lot of people ever bothered to use. This is a mode literally every 2K game should have. Going into a menu and looking at controls then trying to remember them in-game doesn't cut it. Being able to repeatedly practice the move at the instruction of a mentor is not only helpful, but it's a fun way to get good at the game. I really do miss this level of detail and effort from the devs. The blacktop mode took both steps forward and backwards. On one hand, they did away with all the variation. No 3-point contests, no dunk contests, no options for different game modes. All you could do is pick players and play to 21, but I did enjoy the new court with the spectators. Also, the dunk contest had already become trash in 2K11 anyway, so I don't think anybody missed it here. New to the game inside the actual features tab was 2K Shoes, which actually gave you the ability to create your own shoe and apply it to players. I sucked at this and never really gave any effort at it, but cool detail anyways. Speaking of details, NBA2K.com at the time was dedicated to keeping up with your online association, your stats compared to the rest of the community, and much more. But if you go to it now, you can't do much more than check if the servers are still online. Just falls right in line with the kind of effort they were putting in at the time. So out of every 2K I've reviewed so far, this game might have been the thickest in terms of features, details, and additions. 2K11 is widely regarded as the greatest 2K ever, but doing a deep dive into this iteration made me wonder how much of a role nostalgia played in the rankings. What I mean is, 2K11 was the first to feature a lot of integral features we have today, including legends, and that always makes it special to us. So does that keep us from being able to see the clear improvements that were made the very next year? Honestly, my takeaway from looking at everything is that 2K12 was simply more of everything 2K11 had to offer in most cases. More my career features, better face skins, more controls, more ability in creating a legend, expanded NBA's greatest. That makes it sound like the question might not be how 2K12 was better than 2K11, but how was it not? So the rankings. Presentation gets an easy 10. Everything was beautiful and easily accessible. The intro is in the 2K Hall of Fame. The presentation in-game was amazing, so no debating here. Graphics are getting a 10 as well. I originally said 2K11 looked the best, but there's literal evidence that 2K12 had some pretty steep improvements to a lot of players. However, despite my little mini rant about looking for where 2K11 was better, I can't logically give 2K12 a 10 on gameplay. That speed issue was way too simple of a thing to be in the game, and then there's the part where I can't remember if it was patched or not. If you take out that issue, like I said, I still can't remember any other specific issues that just flat out ruined the gameplay, nor did I find any while searching. I did, however, find the revamped controls, which were an important step into the evolution of how we play the game today. So in conclusion, I'm going 9.9 there. And the features gets an easy 10. If I gave 2K11 a 10 here, I almost want to give 2K12 an 11 out of 10 because they just took all the previous features and made them even better while adding even more. So while the ranking of 9.9 would put it right behind 2K11 in the rankings, as I said when I first started this series, we're going to eventually rank these in order at the end considering all the intangibles. Some of these are inevitably going to have the same number ranking, and some are going to have a lower ranking because of some outlying issue despite actually being a better overall game than the one in front of it. As I finish this review, I'm just not so sure 2K11 was the better game, and if I was doing the ranking today, I'd probably put 2K12 in front of it. But that's why we're doing this together. As I said before, I can't truthfully rank these games perfectly this many years later because the one thing I can't fully recapture alone is what it actually felt like to play these games in the moment. That's the part we all have to do together. So if you have things that you remember about these games that I don't include, leave them in the comments so this can be done properly once the series is over. That's when we'll really consider everything and other people's inputs, and hopefully come up with a believable list about where these 2K games rank. But as for the 2K12 review, we're now done. We only have one more 2K to review on the old consoles, and that's really exciting because this is gonna get really fun once we get to the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One titles. Make sure to hit the like button, comment, and sub if you enjoyed, and subscribe and hit the bell next to my name if you want notifications on future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.